Bienvenue and welcome to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies that make us feel seen. Today, my co-host is a multifaceted talent, the incomparable Sophie Thatcher, a star on a continuous rise. You may have seen Sophie last year in Heretic, opposite Hugh Grant and Chloe East, or in the Disney Plus miniseries, The Book of Boba Fett. You may have also heard Sophie's 2024 EP, Pivot and Scrape, a fantastic moody listen. And now you absolutely have seen Sophie as Natalie, especially if you listen to this podcast, in the delicious TV series Yellowjackets on SHOWTIME. Its third season is premiering on Valentine's Day. What a treat. Look at that. We are awash in Sophie Thatcher. She also stars in Companion alongside Jack Quaid, out in theaters right now, and that is a science fiction robot thriller that I highly recommend you go check out. Sophie joins Feeling Seen to talk about the film, her deep love of karaoke, and the 1972 musical adaptation from Christopher Isherwood's Goodbye to Berlin, Cabaret. We thank our lucky stars for the talent that is Liza Minnelli. Okay, that's it. Let's get to the conversation. Leave your troubles outside. Life is disappointing? Forget it. Here is our interview with Sophie Thatcher. Sophie Thatcher, what else do the folks need to know about you before we get started here today?
Oh, God. I mean, it's really nice when people bring up my music.
Of course. What is it like having this many and different types of things come out in such quick succession? Because I feel like that has to feel something a little bit different. That's a lot of exposure and a lot of different parts of yourself, especially bringing in music, not only making and putting out in the world, but then litigating it with everybody.
I think the music part was the most scary for me because it's something that I'm just not as used to, and I don't really know how to navigate it. Companion was a little scary too, I cannot lie, because I initially didn't think I was going to be able to pull off the character, and I saw the movie and I was like, this works, this is great. I'm really proud of that one.
You should be. It's very good.
Thank you.
One of my literal single favorite category of performance is actors playing robots playing people. That distillation, that sequence, which people are like, that's redundant. Of course the actors are playing it. No. Not every actor playing a robot is playing a person that is not to their conscious mind anything but a human being. So and Alicia Vikander, set this standard.
Yes. Oh my God. That was kind of the biggest inspiration. Yeah.
I honestly, the way the movie plays with the back and forth, is she, isn't she kind of thing. But, I just want to say the way that we meet you with your walk in the very beginning of the movie and, the precision of your steps, I was like, this is giving Alicia Vikander in Ex Machina with that, too perfect to be human, but not mechanical in the way that a robot would be. And, the performance of humanity I was very keyed into.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very fine line. And I think we were kind of trying to figure it out the entire time. But I'm glad it worked because the movie would have been very different.
Well, I have threads that I was reading. I have threads that I tied together when I was reading an interview that you had given where you talked about being a karaoke enthusiast. And the film that you brought to discuss is one of the all-time greats in Cabaret. And the roads converge for me where I was once in a karaoke league when I lived in San Francisco. And one of my proudest moments in competition was performing Maybe This Time.
It's, I think, the ballsiest song. It's always late at night. Everyone's always drunk. It's that. Well, it's hard because it's, those people go up at karaoke bars that punish people with musical theater.
Maybe this time I'll be lucky. Maybe this time he'll stay.
Maybe this time is if I'm feeling a lot and I bring people down with me.
Maybe this time, for the first time, love won't hurry away. He will hold me fast. I'll be home at last. Not a loser anymore, like the last time and the time before.
But it's like it's a treat because like if you're in a common space karaoke and you get even a couple people that know what you're doing up there, the way you can all
They're
soar.
rooting you on. It builds you up. It gives you life. It's funny. So many interviews, I end up talking about it. It is kind of a weekly thing for me. And during COVID, I was doing it all the time by myself, just with my Scarlet, practicing everything. And I ended up actually, like, I was always singing maybe this time when I was younger. I sang it way too early on. I did a performance of just the song Cabaret with a karaoke machine for a school talk show. And I think it was me and my friend, and we were in 6th grade, which is way too young to be singing.
You're like, I was in my Joel Grey outfits.
What good is sitting alone in your room? Come hear the music play. Life is a cabaret, old chum. Come to the cabaret. Put down
Yeah, no, it was definitely a little uncomfortable for the parents. Yeah, I guess that was my introduction, and just knowing the musical first and singing it. And I actually had gone through the process of auditioning for Sally Bowles recently. I was able to rewatch it a couple times, and just as the most important movie to me, the most important musical. And before I die, I have to play her. I also think that growing up listening to Liza Minnelli, I tried to replicate her vibrato. Very distinctive vibrato.
The singular Liza Minnelli, the one, the only Liza.
Yeah. When I tried to do the audition, it was almost like I was trying to impersonate her too much.
Sure.
But then I finally saw the movie, I think when I was 13 or 14, because it was one of my older sister's favorite movies. And it was just, everybody in my family really loved it. And I just had never been so moved by a performance or a movie. And now just rewatching it, I've rewatched it a couple times. And I just think it's a movie of so many depths. It's a movie of cynicism, despair, seduction. It's just, I've never felt so much mania confined in a movie.
I mean, I think that's a perfect way of describing, like, if you watch a Liza performance and you give yourself over to it, like, I watch her and like, has anybody ever known or felt or embodied mania the way that Liza, like, there was another, we've had one other Liza movie brought on, the actress Sheila McCarthy, who was tremendous in Women Talking and came on. It was such a beautiful conversation. She wanted to talk about The Sterile Cuckoo, which I had never heard of. It's another Liza film.
I don't know that.
It was excellent. And it's just like, nobody could capture the highest highs or the lowest lows of feeling than Liza. And watching this last night, I was just like, it's so fun getting to watch movies for these conversations, because I'm trying to watch it from like the filter of the person that I'm talking to when I've read a bunch about them and I've watched a bunch of stuff that they've done. And like, I'm really trying to go into it, not even with necessarily new eyes, but like the way you watch, and like I feel like it just helps let in the information of a movie that I've already processed before and have it be like,
Absolutely. It was very informative to me. And it's so interesting. There's so many different versions of Sally. And Sally is American in the movie. And I always forget that usually she's British in the play. There's something inherently charming about Liza Minnelli's normal accent and the way she decides to put on affectations. You feel her desperation to be something other than who she is. She wants to feel bougie. She just wants to be anything other than how she grew up. And I find it a bit of a disconnect when I've seen it or seen clips when Sally Bowles is too posh.
Ja?
Guten Tag, Fräulein. Bin ich bei Schneider? Könnte ich Sie sprechen? Ich suche ein Zimmer.
Fräulein Schneider, nix zu Haus. Have you a cigarette, darling? I am desperate.
Yes. Yes, I think so.
Oh, fantastic.
You're American.
Oh, God, how depressing. You're meant to think I'm an international woman of mystery. I've been working on it like mad.
I was told there might be a room to rent here. Not too expensive, I hope.
Divine decadence. I'm Sally Bowles.
I'm Brian Roberts.
Come Come in, Brian, darling. Schön. English and cigarette. Oh, God, I've even begun to think of German.
But I mean, I just, as a kid, related to that because I was always putting on accents. I had a Disney casting director ask if I was Swedish. But that's just a weird actor thing. When I get nervous, I put on something else and it's like I have imposter syndrome. And I think Sally Bowles feels that very, very deeply.
Well, that's interesting what you say about like auditioning for her and the feeling like you were coming out. It was like, was that an imitation? Was I trying to imitate something?
It's such a hard line.
Mhm.
But yeah, I really don't think anyone has topped Liza's charm. Her looseness. She's loose. She's so strange and so perfect for the Fosse Verdon. Have you seen, I need to rewatch it, but I feel like this show is criminally underrated. The Fosse Verdon show.
Fosse Verdon, yeah. Oh my God. But there was a moment in that show where Michelle Williams does this, like, she's like outraged and she does this like thing with her hands and resets herself and walks away. And
it's my favorite performance by both of them. And Michelle also played Sally. Yeah, I mean, Sam Rockwell also is just amazing, and learning about Bob Fosse's crazy upper addiction somehow fit exactly into how I expected the movie was made.
My God, yeah.
Seeing the editing, the editing is so strange. The camera angles are so invasive with dancing. It feels so art house, and the intercutting between the rise of fascism outside and it getting bleaker, and inside it's just more vibrant. I don't know. I rewatching it every single time I rewatch it, it feels more and more timely. And I think more than ever now, because with the rise of fascism now, people get sucked into it, vanity or hedonism or something to distract themselves and lie to themselves about how something or everything in life just feels relatable right now.
Welcome im Cabaret, au Cabaret, Cabaret. Leave your troubles outside. So, life is disappointing. Forget it. In here, life is beautiful. The girls are beautiful. Even the orchestra is beautiful.
No, when it came through that, like, you had chosen this movie, like, producer Daniel immediately texted, he was like, wow, that is a timely watch.
Yeah.
And that, honestly, it was taking me out repeatedly over the course of the movie because this movie obviously is made after World War II. This is a movie made, I think this came out in like 1972. And so it's looking in the rear view and it has a sense of how things happened. But even still, to watch something so effectively, artistically embody, like through editing, the feeling of what it is right now to watch TikTok and then watch the news, it feels like watching a cabaret number interspersed with a Nazi beating someone to death in an alleyway.
Watching it this time around and with Trump in office, it felt it hit in a very, very, very different way than, of course, when I watched it when I was younger.
Right. Yeah. And that's such a one of the best parts of the conversations I feel like I get to have on the show are talking to people who've had films with them for such a long time. And obviously this is an older film, but like the way that we grow with movies, like the movies stay the same, but the way we grow with movies and the way the world changes around movies, and to like truly at times understand glimpses of what the word timeless means in terms of what someone created that truly stands the test of the ages to be recycled over and over again as current in a horrifying way or in a beautiful way. It's like, it makes me love movies even more to talk about them this way.
True, yeah. And I think with Cabaret, it's been running the West End and on Broadway for years. And I think people just need that release right now.
Well, I like what you pointed out about her looseness. Something that came up in my mind when I was watching it was like, God, the spontaneity of Liza Minnelli, like truly feels like a character created in every moment. Like that she could have done 30 takes before something and that each one would have been different because the moment struck her differently.
Oh, Brian, Liebling, did I tell you? I saw a film the other day about syphilis.
Oh, it was too awful. I couldn't let a man touch me for a week.
Coffee?
Is it true you can get it from kissing?
Oh, yes. And your king, Henry VIII, caught it from letting Cardinal Wolsey whisper in his ear.
That is not, I think, founded in fact. But from kissing, most decidedly. And from towels, and from cups.
And of course, screwing.
Screwing, please.
Oh, fornication.
Fornication.
Oh, right. Darling, what is the German
I
word?
don't remember.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no.
Bumsen.
Oh.
I was, reading you talk about in an interview how like you more of an interior performer. I think of you as kind of like a contained explosion on screen as sort of like a baseline.
Yeah.
And with the kind of looseness that you see in Eliza Minnelli in this, or really something that she carries with her is just like a signature of her performance profile. Like, what is your relationship with that kind of looseness? Is looseness something you work towards? Is looseness something like, that's not quite my toolkit in the sense that Liza has it? But so like, what is your connection to that kind of sprightliness, really, that spontaneity she has?
Yeah, I mean, I want it. I need it. And I think
Good.
that's why I want to play her so badly, because you have to have that mania where you just don't know what's going to happen next. And you
Mhm.
yourself, you have to be so present that you also don't know what's going to happen next. And I think even doing it in a theater production, it's really easy. I mean, I haven't done theater in maybe 10 years, but it's interesting how you can fall into a performance and let it become robotic. And even with TV and with playing, Natalie, I've been playing her for so many years that you have to keep it alive. And I think having Juliet as an influence helped me looser with my body. Of course, you can't force spontaneity, but I think if you remain present and on the other person, I took Meisner classes really early on and didn't last because I got cast in something.
The best way to fail on a miser. It's like a
I
foster
know.
fail. Oh no,
Well,
I'm adopted.
it finally gave me confidence, and I forgot that not everything has to be inwards. It's focused on the other person. And I think if you're lucky enough, I mean, I've been lucky on Yellowjackets to work with really talented performers where it's hard though, because I am a very interior, inwards person where I can overthink. And I think roles like Sally are just the complete opposite of that. And I think that's what I was having when I was doing the audition. I was trying to figure that out and figure out there's a lightness to her in moments too, and it changes in flip of a switch. She's so complicated. And I was actually, it's interesting. I was reading about who the character's based off of. In Goodbye to Berlin, the person who was based off of felt that the role was sexist, and it was reducing her into something, actually was very political her entire life. And that was something that rewatching it, I noticed her indifference to everything around her. And growing up, you don't really, but that is kind of an interesting point, and reading about that after the fact was funny, but it's also written by a man. So there you go. And she's like OG manic pixie dream girl, but so much more depth. So much more depth.
This is actually a conversation I've been having with a lot of friends of mine, writers, directors, who, like, women who are a thing if from our millennial youths, that we miss a little bit is in the way that it can be reclaimed for the present through a shift in perspective. There is an element of sort of personality categorization and like the taxonomizing and tropification of characters that we do miss a little bit. If it's based on you, you can have a critique about it and you can feel any type of way. For sure. But I think there could be if there's an outside perspective to critique this Sally as like, she's a flibberty gibbet, like she's a bimbo. It's like, well, guess what? Bimbos are people too. And bimbos feel a lot. Bimbos are people too. And also like, then it puts, I feel like, the lens on I feel like, listen, not everything has to be political if you don't want it to, but kind of everything is political, even if you don't want it to be. You just don't have to key into it. And Sally still does go to get an abortion. Like, Sally is still surrounded by, like, she's with a woman who is, like, grieving that she might not be, like, this man, like, kind of jumped her, who she cared for, and he cares for her, and it's all very confusing. And we learn later that he's secretly a Jew living in Berlin. And, like, to not be able to escape the politics of your moment as much as you like to box yourself in and away from it, but the decisions you make are still inherently political, and therefore you sort of must observe where the status quo is going. Like, that too is an incredibly interesting way of approaching the politics of Sally to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually rewatched it again a year ago. It was the first movie to come to mind because I think it taught me what abortions were.
Oh, yeah.
I feel being in California, there's less restrictions. But yeah, during that time, it's just interesting to see how Sally seeks out every single distraction.
Mhm.
And I think that's also, again, going back to what I said earlier, timely in a way that, people are on TikTok and, seeking out anything other than what they're in right now, but how she can escape it.
And there's something, have you ever watched Victor Victoria?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God, Julie Andrews as the songbird who arrives in Paris who wants to make a career as a singer, and she realizes that as a woman she's kind of just another act, and so she ends up performing as a drag king at a club where she is Victor and not Victoria, and she ensorcels a local businessman who falls for her as the woman that she is, but he starts getting close to her as the man that she is and starts wondering about these confusing feelings for himself. But it's also sight gags and silliness. I was on a podcast. We had a long conversation about the queerest studio movies of all time. I put that 19 whatever 80 movie as I think the queerest studio movie ever made. Like that and The Birdcage were 1 and 2. You have a moment of Julie Andrews in full drag as a man named Victor defending why she is as much of a man as the man standing across from her, and you're like, yes, gay rights.
I just find it hard to believe that you're a man.
Because you found me attractive as a woman?
Yes, as a matter of fact.
It happens frequently.
Not to me.
It just proves the old adage, there's a first time for everything.
I don't think so.
But you're not 100% sure.
Practically.
Ah, but to a man like you, someone who believes he could never, under any circumstances, find another man attractive, the margin between practically and for sure must be as wide as the Grand Canyon.
If you were a man, I'd knock your block off.
And prove that you're a man.
That's a woman's argument.
Your problem, Mr. Marchand, is that you're preoccupied with stereotypes. I think it's as simple as you're one kind of man, I'm another.
And what kind are you?
One that doesn't have to prove it. To myself or anyone.
Okay, and I only bring it up because it is 1931. I think it is 1931 Paris, and this is 1934 Berlin. And you're dropped into these snapshots of this time where back in America, we're just on the verge of getting into Hays Code cinema. We're still pre-code. And then here in Berlin and Germany, we're Berlin and Paris, we are in these Europes where it is thriving gender fuckery in these cabaret.
Oh yeah, I mean, you see trans women in the second shot of the movie.
Yeah. Oh, that fabulous woman just sitting still at a table smoking.
Oh my God, it's phenomenal! It's gorgeous.
that I was like, wait, pause, and I just stared at that person.
I know. Also, I just love the 70s doing the 30s, because you could tell there was in the 70s.
Great.
It's kind of everything's always recycled, but the 70s is very influenced by the 30s within the eyebrows, the eyelashes, the way that Liza Minnelli had her hair. I always reference because there's something interesting about it being a little bit different, but still feeling freshly 70s. It feels almost like Galliano. It feels like early 2000s runway shows. That's what they were drawing references from.
Maximalism. Let's take these two huge times and let's It's time for a break, but we will be right back with Sophie Thatcher and hear more about her almost choice, Angela Chase, in My So-Called Life. Then at the end, I will have one quick thing before I go about a totally, completely different movie that had a trailer drop this week. That is the Amazon Prime Hot Special G20, starring Viola Davis as an ass-kicking president of the United States who has to defend all other heads of state at a G20 summit taken over by Anthony Starr and his terrorist group. This is made for me, so stick around at the end and we'll talk about it a little bit.
Big E is a former WWE champion.
He spent 10 years at the top, sharing the ring with John Cena and Roman Reigns.
So, what's next?
When I retire, I'm going to move to the desert. I'm going to delete all my socials. I'm going to disappear. Y'all will never hear from me again. I'm going to sit on the couch, chill, and live my life.
From the legendary tag team The New Day.
It's Big E on Tights and Fights.
I feel like I need to listen to a few episodes that you guys have because this was really enjoyable. So thank you so much for your time. Oh yes. Oh, yes.
Available on Maximum Fun or wherever you get your podcasts.
The following are real reenactments of pretend emergency calls.
911. My husband! It's my husband! Calm down, please. What about your husband? He loads the dishwasher wrong. Please help! Please help me! Where are you now, ma'am? At the kitchen table. I was with my dad. He mispronounces words intentionally.
There are plenty of podcasts on the hunt for justice, but only one podcast has the courage to take on the silly crimes. Judge John Hodgman, the only true crime podcast that won't leave you feeling sad and bad and scared for once. Only on MaximumFun.org.
Well, and I've read you talking about like somebody asked like, so what's next? And you were like, anger. Anger is what's next, and I wanted to hear sort of in the context of like, you know, we've talked a bit about like I've read you talking about how like there was you felt a sort of an extra pressure in season 2 of making Yellowjackets, the sort of the link between your performance with Juliette Lewis's performance and talking about auditioning for Sally and feeling maybe perhaps on the imbalanced side of that imitation creation process with singing a Sally Bowles song and going into music where I feel like we begin so much as like a product of our influences and maybe recreating the things we like. I wanted to hear about that tension and progression for you with putting out music in a different creative avenue of creation and imitation and inspiration and like something new, and where you find that balance differently perhaps than you do with screen work.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like with music, it felt the most me out of everything. It felt like diving into my mind, even re-listening. I know exactly where I was, and it feels so personable and vulnerable, even without other people understanding that. I think because I'd been working on music and making demos for years, I knew exactly what I wanted the sound to be like without it being, because I'm a very referential person, whether it be photos, whether it be through a performance. And I think that's what kind of, you know, irks me when I have adaptations or, you know, playing a young Juliette or playing Natalie as a young Juliette. I think sometimes that feels like I'm confined and I have restrictions. It's a very strange thing to do as an actor, and especially as your first role that people know you from the public and people just assume you that way. But I think with music, it felt like I was finally able to speak my truth in abstract ways, but also just through feeling and through sound. And it's all feeling. It's not, and you can dissect the lyrics, but I think I was just really happy with what came of having control. You know, even just being on a TV show, you don't have control, and you don't have control over your character arc, where she's going. So I think that was the most satisfying and vulnerable part of it, but it definitely feels I feel lucky and like I'm in a good artistic mindset right now, where I just have to be honest. There's kind of no other option. And I feel that with acting, but it again, it's a job. And it's really hard when, you're playing an interpretation of somebody else. And even with, when I was doing my Sally Bowles audition and really obsessing over that, it was always somebody in the back of my head. Whereas with music, I've rid myself of that. And I'm sure I'll go through phases. I think I'm in the very, when someone makes a first EP or just starts out with making music, it's the most inspirational time.
Well, I think too that like there's something to doing the first thing, and this comes every once in a while in conversations we have here, where having first time filmmakers on, and there's such a wonderful respite in not knowing what you don't know. And like how many interviews do you see from that filmmaker who made that first movie that was so virtuoso, and how'd you do that? And they're like, I didn't know, I wasn't supposed to. Like, I didn't actually somebody after was like, why did you have babies and dogs and fire on set at the same time? And I was like, I don't know, I thought it looked cool. Like, and it turned out looking cool. But like, you can go through the checklist of things you probably shouldn't have done to make your first feature. And that comes where so much of that serendipity and magic is when you don't know the rules to not break them.
Yeah, I think it's all based upon intuition. And I want the same approach to that with acting for every role. And it kind of goes back to the conversation about being present and spontaneous.
Mm-hmm.
It's all based upon your intuition. And I find that with music, I go into this improvised meditative state where I haven't had a lot of experience improvising on camera. And that's something I really want to challenge myself with, because you're forced into being present and spontaneous. You don't always get that on TV. You don't always have the option. With Companion, I was playing a robot, so there were restrictions that. And then I remember a couple days on set, Jon Favreau would always want us to improvise in our Star Wars universe. And I was like, my God, there's so many restrictions. There's so much lingo that I don't know. I would love to do a movie where I'm building the character from the ground up, and it can truly just be based upon intuition and spontaneity and building the character with the filmmaker so you have full control.
I'm really excited for you to do that. That sounds great.
I mean, it's not impossible.
No, I would say on the menu of things that are possible for you, that's like actually very high. It's very high on the possibility list. But I want to make sure that we don't get away from this conversation without going back to the 90s a little bit. Because if you want to talk about a character that is like, feels like spiritually the diametric opposite of Sally Bowles via Liza Minnelli, it is Claire Danes as the Angela Chase.
It's interesting because I relate to both of them in a lot of different ways. I relate to Sally Bowles, her desperation to be seen and wanted. And I think hence why I'm an actor. To be honest. But I think most actors feel that way, but just don't fucking say it. Whereas, Angela Chase feels that way too, but she's so incredibly inwards and introspective. And I think that watching that, I was very shy as a child, and I forced my way out of it. And I think that, doing press like this, it's forced me out of my shyness. But I feel that watching Angela Chase and feeling with her, feeling so deeply that sometimes you feel like you're going to explode. And I still feel, I'm still playing a teenager on a TV show, but I feel a way that like teenagers can't contain their emotions. I still feel that. Again, hence why I'm an actor. I need a release.
There's something Sunday night that really makes you want to yourself. Especially if you've just been totally made a fool of by the only person you'll ever love, and you have a geometry midterm on Monday, which you still haven't studied for. because you can't, because Brian Krakow has your textbook and you're too embarrassed to even deal with it. And your little sister's completely finished with her homework, which is just, like, so simple and mindless. A child could do it.
Mom, Dad, I finished my report on crustaceans.
And that creepy 60 Minutes watch that sounds like your whole life ticking away.
Yeah, I need to rewatch that show because I totally shifted my personality around that. And I was just very susceptible to any character that I watched that I liked. My personality would be different the next week. But Claire Danes or Angela Chase was the first one where I was like, that is me. I see myself on screen. I dyed my hair red. And I was so obnoxiously boy obsessed where it would take over my entire world. And it was fun. It was exciting. Watching her with Jared Leto and then rewatching it and being like, no, you have to go for Brian Krakow. It's so crazy rewatching
Leave
it.
Jordan Catalano alone. Run away.
And I was actually thinking about doing this is like 99, 2000 Freaks and Geeks, because that was also I think rewatching it, I feel a lot more like the Lindsay character than I did back then.
Right.
And was very, very much that in high school, right?
That's Linda Carlini, right? That's Lindsay?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing. But I never knew where I fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And same with, Claire Danes. She has just this feeling of not belonging anywhere, even in her own family. So I think that was a big thing that I hadn't seen on screen before. And I think that was the first realistic depiction of suburbia and adolescence in a TV show.
Mm-hmm. If you told AI to generate an image of suburban malaise, it would come up with an image of Angela Chase from I feel like that feels like when that, I don't know if that was when that term was coined, like the idea of suburbia, but it kind of feels like the idea of like jaded suburbia is like embodied by the disaffected, like ironic notion of being a young person in the world, that like reality bites, Ethan Hawke speak of like everything's a corporate jingle situation. And we had a brief little aside about Doom Generation before this got started. Guys, there's a 4K restoration of Greg Araki's Doom Generation out there in the world. I highly recommend it. There's just something, I find that what pulls me so hard about watching 90s stuff at this present moment is just how tangible everything feels. And I realize how much my soul is yearning for that on screen when I watch something from the 90s. I'm like, oh, I feel like I could touch all of it. And even if it would feel gross, and even if it's Doom Generation, and it's blood and it's hot dogs on the ground and it is Rose McGowan's incredible lipstick and smoke curling off of her mouth. I feel like I could touch all of it. And there's just something so satisfying when you walk out of a movie and you feel like you could have been like wrapped in the clothes that they were wearing.
Yeah, I completely relate to that without having ever lived through the 90s. I was born in 2000, embarrassingly enough. But I guess it was really easy to tap into musically because music is the thing that transports me, and 90s is probably my favorite time. But I also feel that the tangible aspect of 90s movies is, they don't have the disconnection of phones.
Yeah.
I am immediately taken out of a movie if I see somebody using their phone or on screen.
I feel like you need to link up with Robert Eggers, that quote going around from him recently where like the thought of like photographing a car makes me physically sick.
That's funny. But yeah, it's so interesting because it's also like you can't ignore it now in movies without it doesn't feel as modern. But I think that was also something refreshing for me, somebody that just grew up so disconnected from the outside world and so plugged into my computer or my phone. But yeah, I think that's the most hideous, tacky thing when or it's just like, oh, there's like a fake app on the it's disgusting. And there's no way to do it tastefully. And I even felt like with Companion, even seeing the lock screen and the phone, I was like, ugh. I was like, it gives me the ick. I think it gives me more of the ick.
You're like, honestly, my one note is, must we see the device?
I know, but you need it. You need it. And it's so obnoxious, but I love that about DM generation. And I guess that was just the first thing to come to mind. Or not, but any 90s and My So-Called Life, of course. I mean, I feel like we're in a very strange time for movies right now, but I know people like Sean Baker make me excited.
Yes.
People like, I don't know, there are some filmmakers that I think are bringing back that 70s feeling of independent filmmaking, where it just feels fully engrossing and passionate. I think a lot of people are lacking passion and earnestness right now.
Well, I have to wrap it up, but I will say, I want to make sure and say that you are one of the things that make us excited.
Oh,
you are one of the people we are excited about. You are one of the things that makes us excited. Like this is a space of revelry for the positivity and the joy and the thrill of possibility and creation. And you, Sophie Thatcher, are on the front lines of being one of the winning people out there. And we thank you for your service in these trenches of cultural battle.
I know. Thank you. That means a lot. I'm gonna try to continue. I want to make my own movies too and make what people are making. And I think that's more normalized now. Anywho, thank you. That's very kind.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. It has been an honor and a dream to have you on the show, Sophie. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the just outstanding Sophie Thatcher. Me and producer Daniel, we were just so excited to make this happen, and it happened, and that was a fantastic conversation. And I hope it gets you all out there to watch some of the movies we talked about. See Cabaret, see Victor Victoria. Hell, Doom Generation came up. Go watch that, and go see her in Companion in a theater near you. And Yellowjackets live this weekend once again with the return of The White Lotus. What a double-decker of primetime prestige television. And now that one quick thing before I go, we have to acknowledge this. Like, it's great that the trailer for The Accountant 2 came out. I'm sincerely so excited about it, and I hope they equalizer that and just keep making that movie and those movies into an extended franchise. There's also another Lost Bullet movie. They're teasing the poster has finally come out for Lost Bullet 3, amazing French action franchise. But really the main event, guys, is the trailer for G20. And I say this in a rare form of complimentary way. The poster looks like an AI generation if you went to an image creation bot and you said, make me an American propaganda movie poster with Viola Davis as the president. Like, just like if you said those words, like America, Viola Davis president, patriotism. Like some permutation of that. I think that gives you what the poster for G20 is, which is like a gowned Viola Davis looking fabulous, but also like in a power stance, holding an automatic rifle, like a powerful gun, staring stoically forward as you glean that. Okay, G20, that's like the government thing. That's the world leaders thing. And she's holding a gun and she looks powerful. So did something bad happening at the G20 and our only hope is Viola Davis in a gown? Yes, actually, if those are any of the cues you gathered from the G20 poster that came out just a couple days ago, you would be exactly correct, because the trailer came out and the president... You guys, this trailer opens with like President Viola Davis, like looking like she's at dinner with like her husband and her two kids. And her daughter says to her, like, all you care about is work. Then she tells kids, like, you're coming to Cape Town with us. She's taking the whole family to the G20 summit. I'm going to take the whole family to what's probably the most dangerous place in the entire world. And then we're at the G20. And then terrorist Anthony Starr shows up with his very own Australian accent. Anthony Starr, I might be fucking that up. He shows up with a brigade of militants, and they take over that G20. And guess what, guys? They're going to record every single G20 head of state and capture their voice and likeness, and they're going to deep fake them into taking over the world. They're going to deep fake all these heads of state, and then they're going to run the world with surreptitious content, you know? And who can stop them but President Viola Davis, who appears to be a military veteran or a combat veteran of some kind, or perhaps, I don't know, if you watch the movie You're Next, maybe she too was raised on a separatist compound in the bush where her dad taught her survival tactics. I don't know her origin, but the point is she is the only thing standing between the leaders of the G20 and these militants and a certain demise of the world. And yeah, that's what's going on. She's in a gown, which goes from floor length to like thigh length at a certain point. She is carrying a big gun. She is beating people up. This is everything I want from a movie called G20 with this premise. This is Cape Town Has Fallen. This is Cape Town Has Fallen. Any movie like this is a has fallen movie. This is the genre of Gerard Butler expanding to include Viola Davis is a beautiful thing, and we should give thanks for that. And so, yeah, G20, guys, it's coming to Prime. And so is season 3 of Reacher soon. So, like, I'm being fed very well. On that note, y'all, that is our show. You can keep up with us wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that follow button wherever you are listening and get a new episode in your feed in real time when it updates. You can also follow us on Instagram at Feeling Seen Pod. We are on Blue Sky, me and the show. You search Feeling Seen, or you search Jorcru, Jorcru, and we are there. And I also remain in the mines on Twitter, so you can find me there too. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Danielle Quasius. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson, Laura Swisher. This is a production of Maximum Fun, and it is still the Gulf of Mexico.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
supported
directly
by you.